What's up, guys? So hope your weekend went pretty well. I want to talk to you guys today about multimeters and why you should spend a little bit extra to get the proper meter versus wasting your time on something cheap. So right here we've got two meters. We've got a Fluke and a Craftsman. This Craftsman meter was probably about 40 bucks. This Fluke meter was probably about 120 bucks if I remember right. Now, the reason you should spend 3 times the money and get the good meter is we're talking electrical testing here. Any weak meter you have may severely impact your time in on a project way overboard versus if you had the correct meter right off the bat. Now, this Craftsman meter, it's got an issue with the amp draw setting. Now, the sad part is the reason I found out about this was I was working on a Corvette. I was doing a parasitic draw test on it. Basically, the owner would park the car overnight, and it was so severe that by the next morning the battery would be dead. When I had the car in, I basically right off the bat was seeing that it had a 1.96 amp draw, which is pretty severe, which would be consistent on what he's telling me about the battery dying overnight. So I started taking the car apart, unplugging things here and there, just trying to find the source of this draw. Well, eventually I got to the point where I had the battery disconnected from both internal fuse block and the under hood fuse block, and I was still getting that 1.96 amp draw. Now, there was a couple of random things to the car that I would do, and the amp draw would drop maybe to about 1.5 amps. Never any less than 1.5 amps. So I was really scratching my head trying to figure out what exactly was going on with this thing. Well, after completely isolating every circuit, including the starter and the alternator, which the alternator was one of those things I would disconnect, and on occasion it would drop to 1.5 amps. Well, after doing all that, screwing around for hours trying to figure out this problem, I came to the conclusion that something was wrong with my multimeter. So, that same night, I went out to the local Lowe's or Home Depot and I picked this guy up. It was like 120 bucks. Hooked it up to the meter, was getting like 0 amp draw right off the bat. So, that confirmed my suspicions that this guy right here was just wasting my time. I forget what the actual cause of the amp draw on that particular vehicle was, but just to let you guys know, it is well worth to spend a little bit of extra money to get the correct meter. I know this thing's like 4 times the cost of this little Craftsman meter, but you know, this entry little meter, you know, will end up costing you money in the long run. So, you know, I highly recommend you get a good quality meter, something that you can trust, because anytime you're doing electrical testing, if you have any kind of suspicions that your equipment is faulty or that it is faulty and you don't even know about it, the labor time that you have in on that project, you know, whether you waste enough time the first project to warrant buying this or, you know, over the span of, you know, a few different cars you use, ultimately this thing is going to cost you money. So that's something to consider, you know, when you're purchasing tools. Hand tools, it doesn't really matter. They either work or they don't, you know, but when you're talking about electrical stuff, you want to make sure you have a good quality product. So basically, you know, I wrote on this meter just to let me know that the amp function is broken. I'm not going to throw this thing away because it does do voltage. So if I'm ever in a pinch working on my own stuff, you know, I can still test for voltage stuff. I will have in the back of my mind thinking that this meter is a piece of junk, but at least it does do the voltage. So as long as I got that note on there, I'll know not to use the amp function. So, yep, that's pretty much it for today. I don't have an automotive thing going on right now. I've got another 76 Corvette that I will be working on. We'll get that video out probably tomorrow to you guys. So this is just your daily tech tip or monthly tech tip, depending on how often I do this sort of thing. But, yep, so thanks for watching. You know, if you have any questions or comments, let me know. If you came, you know, into the same situation, you know, where your meters failed you and you pretty much wasted your time, let me know your experiences with that. You know, and I would like to say I do love this meter. This thing is pretty sweet. You know, it lights up. It's got a backlight. You know, pretty nice meter. Gets the job done. No fuss. You know, it's going to save me money in the long run. So that's pretty much it. So I appreciate you guys watching, and stay tuned for another one. All right, thanks.